All right, everyone, get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something really wild, the quantum Zeno effect. And no, it's not science fiction, even though it might sound like it.
It definitely sits on the edge of science fiction, but it's very much real and very much mind-blowing.
Okay, so picture this. You've got a pot of water on the stove, right? You're waiting for it to boil, but every time you look at it, the temperature resets. It's like you're stuck in some kind of time loop, and it's never going to boil. Now imagine that same scenario, but with a tiny particle, like an electron, instead of water.
That's a great way to visualize it. Essentially, in the quantum realm, particles exist in this fuzzy state of potential, what we call a wave function. They're not really here or there, but kind of everywhere and nowhere at the same time.
Right, like they haven't quite made up their minds yet. So what happens when we actually try to observe them? Do they suddenly pick a spot?
Exactly. The very act of observing them forces these particles to collapse into a definite state. It's like we're hitting the pause button on their quantum evolution. And get this, the more we observe them, the more we're hitting that pause button, keeping them frozen in their initial state.
So instead of a boiling pot, it's like we've got this tiny particle frozen in time. It's like Zeno's paradox, right? That thought experiment where an arrow never reaches its target because we keep dividing its journey into smaller and smaller segments.
That's a really good analogy. The continuous observation is essentially trapping the quantum system, just like that arrow forever in flight. It's completely counterintuitive, but the experimental evidence is there.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me this isn't just theoretical? We've actually observed this happening.
Oh, absolutely. Back in 1990, scientists actually demonstrated the quantum Zeno effect in the lab. They were working with trapped ions, bombarding them with microwaves to manipulate their energy states. But here's the kicker. By observing these ions at very specific intervals, they were able to prevent them from transitioning to a different state. They essentially froze them.
Okay, now that is just wild. So it's not just some theoretical quirk of quantum mechanics, it's something we can actually see and manipulate in a lab.
Exactly. And it didn't stop there. Researchers at Cornell later showed that this effect could even be used to control the tunneling of atoms, which is basically like particles teleporting through barriers.
Hold on. Atoms teleporting, this just keeps getting wilder. So we've got particles frozen in time, atoms teleporting. Where does it go from here? What are the implications of all of this?
That is a very good question, and it leads us to some astounding possibilities, potentially even impacting the animal kingdom. You see, some studies suggest that the quantum Zeno effect might actually play a role in how birds sense Earth's magnetic field for navigation.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying birds might be using quantum mechanics to find their way around the globe?
It's still an active area of research, but it's a mind-blowing concept to consider, right? That something as bizarre as the quantum Zeno effect might be happening inside a bird's cells, guiding them on their migrations.
Okay, that is just too cool. We're talking about freezing atoms, potentially explaining bird navigation. I have a feeling we're just scratching the surface here. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's bring it back down to earth for a second and talk about what might be the most exciting application of the quantum Zeno effect. Quantum computing. So quantum computing, it's like the ultimate frontier of computation, promising to revolutionize everything. But what's the quantum Zeno effect got to do with it?
Well, think of it this way. Building a quantum computer is kind of like trying to build a house of cards in the middle of a hurricane.
Okay, fragile and chaotic. I get it. What are the cards in this scenario?
The cards are the qubits, those quantum bits of information that make quantum computers so powerful. The problem is, qubits are incredibly sensitive to their environment. Even the slightest disturbance can cause them to lose their quantum properties, a process we call decoherence.
So it's like 1 minute you've got this qubit holding all this potential, and then poof, it's gone.
Pretty much. And when a qubit decoheres, all that quantum information stored within it vanishes. It's a huge roadblock in building large-scale, reliable quantum computers.
So how does the quantum Zeno effect help? Do we just put these qubits in a timeout?
In a way, yes. Remember how we talked about constantly observing a particle, essentially freezing it in place? Well, imagine doing that with qubits. By strategically applying a series of measurements, we can continuously nudge them back on track, preventing them from decohering.
So it's like we're giving them a constant reminder, hey, you're a qubit, remember, don't forget your quantum superpower.
Exactly. It's all about maintaining what we call qubit coherence, which basically means how long we can hold on to that precious quantum information before it disappears. And the quantum Zeno effect might be one of the keys to extending that coherence time, leading to more powerful and reliable quantum computers.
And that opens the door to, well, just about anything, right? I mean, we're talking about solving problems that are impossible for even the most powerful classical computers. Things like drug discovery, material science, artificial intelligence.
The potential applications are truly mind-boggling, and it's incredible to think that this all might tie back to our earlier discussion about birds.
Right. If birds are really using the quantum Zeno effect to navigate, who knows what other bio-inspired technologies we could develop by studying how living organisms might be tapping into these quantum phenomena.
It really makes you appreciate the interconnectedness of everything, doesn't it? From the tiniest particles to the way birds migrate, it seems like the quantum world might be playing a much bigger role in our lives than we ever imagined. But speaking of mind-boggling implications, there's one more layer to this that we need to explore. The theoretical interpretations of what's actually happening at the quantum level.
Ah, yes. The why behind the what. This is the part where things tend to get really philosophical, isn't it? Hit me with your best shot. What are some of the leading explanations for this bizarre quantum Zeno effect?
Well, one of the most widely accepted interpretations is the Copenhagen interpretation. It's one of the oldest explanations in quantum mechanics, and it essentially says that the act of measuring a quantum system forces it to choose one definite state out of all its possibilities.
Okay, so before we measure it, it's like that particle has a whole menu of options, but the second we try to pin it down, it has to pick one.
Exactly. And the act of measuring collapses its wave function, making all those other possibilities disappear.
So if we continuously measure it, it's like we keep resetting the menu, preventing it from ever serving up a different dish.
Precisely. It's a bit like a quantum game of peekaboo. But then there's another even wilder interpretation called the many worlds interpretation, and things get even more interesting here.
Oh, I've heard of this one. This is where it gets really mind-bending, right? Like infinite realities splitting off with every quantum measurement.
You got it. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every single time a measurement is made, the universe doesn't just choose one outcome and discard the rest. Instead, it splits, creating a separate branch of reality for every single possibility.
So every time we observe a particle and force it to choose a state, we're essentially creating a new universe where it chose a different state.
That's the basic idea. In this view, the quantum Zeno effect isn't so much about freezing a system in place, but rather about our perception as observers following one specific path through a constantly branching multiverse.
Okay, my brain just went through a wormhole. So we're constantly creating new universes just by observing things. I think I need to sit down for this.
It's a lot to wrap your head around. And here's the thing. We don't have a definitive answer yet. These interpretations are just different ways of trying to make sense of this incredible strangeness that is quantum mechanics.
It's like we've stumbled onto the biggest, most mind-blowing mystery novel ever written, and we're still trying to decipher all the clues. I guess that's part of what makes quantum mechanics so fascinating. It pushes us to the very edge of what we think we know about reality.
Absolutely. And it constantly reminds us that there's still so much more to discover out there.
It's both exhilarating and a little bit terrifying at the same time, isn't it?
Definitely. It really makes you appreciate the sheer mystery of it all.
Speaking of mystery, we've covered a lot of ground here today. What are some of the key takeaways you hope listeners will walk away with from this deep dive?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that the quantum Zeno effect isn't just some abstract concept confined to physics labs. It has the potential to revolutionize our world in countless ways, from building more powerful computers to potentially unlocking new bio-inspired technologies.
And it also forces us to confront some pretty profound questions about the nature of reality and our place in it. Like, if observation can influence the quantum world, what does that say about our role as observers in the grand scheme of things?
That's a question that philosophers have been wrestling with for centuries, and it seems like quantum mechanics is only making it more complex and more intriguing.
It really highlights how interconnected everything is, right? From the tiniest subatomic particles to the way birds navigate across continents, it's like we're all part of this grand cosmic dance, and we're just beginning to understand the steps.
Yeah. Beautifully put. It's a humbling thought, isn't it?
It certainly is. Well, I think we've given our listeners plenty to ponder today. Any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
Just that I encourage everyone to stay curious and keep exploring. The quantum world is full of surprises, and who knows what incredible discoveries await us just around the corner.
Couldn't agree more. And if any of today's discussions sparked your curiosity, be sure to check out the show notes for links to all the fascinating research we discussed. From those groundbreaking experiments to the mind-boggling theories, there's a whole rabbit hole of quantum wonders waiting to be explored. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey into the heart of the quantum Zeno effect. Until next time.